The null hypothesis. I used to think that I was really bad at math. I never really did all that well in calculus, or stats, or gen chem, or really anything that has to do with numbers. I'm also kind of really bad at everything, except complaining about everything. I excel at that. The null hypothesis. The statement or default position that there is no relationship between two measured phenomena or no association among groups. Everything I do, I feel reminds me of that meme of the bird drawing. I took a calculated risk, but man, am I bad at math. The null hypothesis, in layman's terms, the statement that there is no relationship between two entities. And I feel, in a lot of ways, this is how people think about how good or bad they are, as ridiculous, dichotomous, and subjective as this is going to sound, at relationships. To reject or disprove the null hypothesis, we must deduce that there are grounds to believe that there is a relationship between two entities. To reject or disprove the null hypothesis, we must compare it to other entities. To reject and disprove the null hypothesis, we must do the work. The null hypothesis is what floats between you and I. Across weeks, across months, across grassy fields and our spheres of companionship, you could not retain the null hypothesis. Not when you took my temperature and size. Not when you explored the peaks and the troughs of my body. Not when you closed the distance between us so many times with no room for error. And not when you count the number of hours that we spent together on the same transcendent plane. You could not reject the null hypothesis. Not when all of these variables exist. You tried to retain the null hypothesis by erasing a variable that you yourself built up completely. Me. And it will take me eons to understand just how much of a phenomena I am. And fuck you for that. You do not just get to erase variables no matter how intangible they are, no matter how much easier it would be to make the math work. I did the math in my head, rationalized every possibility. What hypotheses in my sea of numbers shall I compare you to? The shitty ones that took my imagination and my childhood and my ability to trust? Or the shitty ones that took my agency through strength and weight and blood and primal urges? Or the shitty ones that never bothered to stick around, even in the worst of times? We could do the math together. You would retain the null hypothesis every time. And I would believe you, despite the evidence. But you were your own variable, a phenomenon that refused to fit in the equation. So it matters not whether the hypothesis is proven or disproven. It matters not all of the variables that keep me awake at night, calculating, analyzing, churning, because you can only prove or disprove the null hypothesis if you're willing to seek it. The null hypothesis, the statement that there is no relationship between two phenomena.